So, my guest today, I've already said nice words about her, which is not hard to do with Aida Rodriguez, but I want to say some of it to her face, just so she knows how much I love her. At Funny Aida on Twitter and all the social medias. You might have seen her Netflix special on Tiffany Haddish's They Ready, which she is. She's been grinding for a long time. Forgive the cough. I might have the corona. We talked about this too. We don't know. I've lost my sense of smell. I told the audience earlier, so that's not ideal. Top 10 finalists on the 8th season of Last Comic Standing. Commentator and host on The Young Turks. Actress, producer, writer, podcaster. Please welcome Aida Rodriguez. How are you, my friend?
I'm doing well. I love that you have your antibacterial right on the
Of
desk.
course, of course.
I'm like mine is in plain sight. I'm doing
Yes.
well.
Have
Thank
you?
you for having me.
Of course. Have you been quarantining? Have you been staying home?
Actually, yes. I self quarantined because I was in Canada for House of Comedy. I was in Edmonton,
Great
and
club.
I flew back through Seattle.
Oh
So
shit.
one of the hot spots. So when I got back, I think this is my 14th day. I self quarantined because I wanted to make sure that I didn't get anybody else sick.
Have you been sick?
You know what? I have allergies, and I've been symptomatic in terms of having like the tingling in my throat, and so I don't know. There are degrees to this, right? So
Yeah.
I just felt like I would be fine, and then I just walk around just leaving trails of corona everywhere and getting other people sick, people dying because I was being careless. So I just stayed myself at home. I didn't even do the Young Turks because I didn't want to get anybody else sick.
You're anti leaving trails of death and destruction behind you. That's nice of you.
Yeah, like you don't want to. People who have a conscience, like I would never want to drink and drive and hit somebody, right? I would never want to. I don't. I would never want somebody to lose their life because of my negligence. I don't think I could live with that. Like I
Yeah.
really,
You want
you
someone to
know.
lose their life on purpose if it's going to be at your hand. It's got to be you intended it.
Well, I mean, if it's self-defense, but
Yeah.
I just don't want anybody to lose their life because of me anyway. But certainly not because I got hit when I moved to LA by a woman who was doing her eyeliner while she was driving.
Oh, damn.
And I was so angry with her because I was like, can you be that selfish? So for me, it's just about what does it hurt you to stay at home and not, put somebody else in danger?
Yeah. So Young Turks was still doing shows. Are they still doing it from the studio?
Oh, not anymore.
It's
But
all
when I
done.
got back, they still were. And I was there. I was supposed to cover the Biden Sanders debate, and I did. I had canceled. I was like, because Anna's mom had a kidney transplant, so those people are very compromised. So I was like, I'm not gonna go drop off Corona there. That's my my terminology is I'm dropping off Corona everywhere I go.
That's very kind of you. So you just brought up several things that make me want to discuss different things. We'll start local politics and we'll go broader. You're at the Young Turks. You're one of the hosts. I sometimes do that, but you're like really there all the time. Cenk Uygur, our friend, founder of the Young Turks, ran for California 25 in Katie Hill's seat, the seat that got taken away on account of her threesomes and crazy things that went down and her being exposed and all this stuff. He got slaughtered in this thing. I know Cenk's going to come on in a few weeks too and explain it for himself. But what do you think happened? I was stunned. He got like 5% of the vote. What do you think happened?
Um, Oh, you if I so I think progressive policies are very scary, even in California. I think a lot of people are ill-informed about what being a progressive is. Socialism has been hijacked by the right and been given this communistic connotation that my dad is from Cuba. So I understand what communism is on a very deep level and the trauma, beyond it. But in America, they've hijacked. People really believe that our don't understand that our economy is a mixed economy. That socialism exists, but it only benefits the top. So I think Jank was a casualty of that. He's also, he's very direct and he's a man of color. and people see him as aggressive and they see him as angry because you got to pander sometimes when you're a person of color. You got to soften the blow, and Jank does not soften the blow.
Right.
And this, like, you and I can have these honest conversations. Can a man really defend himself against a woman without being called a sexist?
That's yeah.
With the way things have been hijacked now, like, there's no, you and I can have a conversation right now, publicly, and if you say the wrong thing to me, or with not even the malicious intention, you could be very well be a racist or a sexist based on how it's framed, right?
A
Because
hundred
that's
percent. Just because
the way.
I say something innocent that gets misinterpreted, like I don't think women should drive or vote, it gets twisted.
I knew you were gonna. I knew that you were coming in with that one. I knew you right there. I just gave you the end. But I
Yes,
just think
indeed.
that's the world that we live in now.
It's
So
true though. I mean, I actually, no joke, lost a friend basically because when Cenk announced he was running, I immediately supported him and donated. And I had a friend of mine who started saying, "How dare you? He's this misogynist because of three things he said that were taken out of context from 10 years ago." Which, what dude hasn't said dumb dude things at some point in their life and try to castigate someone's personality from that? And they were coming at me saying, a man, literally, this person said, a man doesn't even have the right to run for Katie Hill's seat. That should only go to a woman. I'm like, what? The seat is now permanently female? It makes no sense.
yeah, and I think I've been the target of a lot of white feminists. Specifically, when I talked about Louis, they wrote articles about me and slates and Jezebel and all that bullshit. And I personally believe in personal responsibility. I don't need you to group me in with anybody. I speak for myself, and I don't bite my tongue, and I usually mean what I say. And if I say something that's not okay, I can apologize. But I just feel like it feels like we're having conversations with the children from Lord of the Flies at this point. And it's a mass hysteria. It's like kill Piggy. What did he say? Then everybody runs over there, and then
Yeah.
let's kill Piggy, and then they run over there. So I think Jank was, you know, I think Jank was going to feel that. As liberal as we think California is, and Los Angeles, when you think about the area specifically, when we're talking about Antelope Valley, it's not as liberal as Los Angeles proper, and
Mm,
those people, even though there are a lot of people who do love Jank and support him, I think that there's a cluster of people in that area who like things the way they are. They don't want to see change.
right.
Not
Right. So then let's broaden it out to Bernie and Biden. You were going to cover that debate. What would you have said? I thought it was a fascinating debate. I loved not having an audience there. It seemed a lot more substantive, and you got to really see the two dudes kind of more as leaders instead of as panderer campaigners.
Yeah.
What was your take on it?
So, I've been staying away from this for a long time because I don't want to. I'm not going to make fun of Joe Biden and because I think he's losing his mind or has dementia. But as a person, a human being, I am concerned about him because I feel like there have been some signs of something going on. I'm not a doctor, so I can't diagnose it, but there's obviously something going on and it's more than just a stutter.
Yeah, oh,
So,
for sure.
and then I feel like how fucked up it can I curse?
Yep.
Is,
Let's do
is
it
our
like now, even if you
system.
can't, but you can, luckily.
Well, sorry, but how messed up
It's all
is the
good.
system that they would, in the name of politics, still, exploit this man who obviously has some things going on. I think Bernie is who Bernie says he is. I come under fire a lot because of Bernie. A lot of women of color who hate him don't understand why I support him.
Why do women
And
of color hate him?
so there's a divide with him. A lot of them that supported Elizabeth Warren, a lot of people have a problem with Bernie because of Bernie's stand on reparations. And there are some issues with him with women, or like, you don't know what's true. You can only know what's true from a person from having an interaction with them and seeing them when it comes to politicians. You just got to roll the dice and say this person looks like this person does this the most, right? At this point, there
Right.
is no,
Yeah.
we don't know who any of them are. What I do know is that from reading, from footage, from history, the things that I've seen, Bernie is who Bernie says he is and has always been that. And that is closest to what I believe in than anybody else. And every single debate, whether you want to make fun of his cadence or not, he's always been consistent in his messaging. There's never, you can go back and see footage of Joe Biden saying one thing and then go back and pull some other footage with him contradicting himself 100%.
Totally.
Bernie's been pretty consistent about who he is, even within his flaws.
I
So,
totally think that's fair, and that's why I support Bernie, and I wish that he still had a path, and I hate that the media even says he doesn't have a path because, I mean, we're in
yeah.
unprecedented times. Any election could change, 180 degrees theoretically in the next month or two till any upcoming primaries, but they want to rule Bernie out, so I defend him. At the same time, between you and I and our millions of podcast listeners, we're up to millions now, I'm telling myself, um, I in that debate and just in this whole pandemic time where everybody's on lockdown, I will say that there's something, even though for sure Biden, I agree, I don't think he's cognitively there. I'm saying it. I think it's clear, and you got to call that out when somebody wants to lead the free world. If they're trying to just greet you at Walmart, maybe you let it go. But somebody wants to be the most powerful person on earth, you have to, of course, take all that into account. But I will say that in a time like this, not only do you get the sense people don't want revolution or drastic change, people want shit returned to normal as soon as possible, but also you know that Biden's going to have like the world's most stable team around him. Obama might end up in that administration or as a Supreme Court justice. You're going to have the brightest minds, and Bernie's notorious for not getting along with people, not compromising, not knowing how to pass legislation, doesn't have a great track record of getting things done. To what degree does that affect, and should that affect people's opinion of who they want to support just simply for that? Because it's great to be ideologically pure. That makes you great as a host, as a writer, as an essayist, but as the person that has to actually go in there and accomplish the things, you've been in there decades, you haven't gotten it done. Where do we judge that?
Well, I mean, shit, that we could say the same thing about Donald Trump, and he's the president. He doesn't get along with people. He doesn't get things accomplished. Blah blah blah. So let's just be clear. If Joe Biden gets the nomination, I'm going to vote for Joe Biden
Hell
because
yeah.
I'm not voting for Donald Trump. So that I'm not one of those people that's going to bite my nose to spite my face. But what I will say is, so I come from a very specific point of view. I'm a woman of color. I'm a Latina woman of color. So when people say they want things to get back to normal, normal for them has always been a place of it might be normal for the average white person in America, but for a person of color, neither of the alternatives are ideal. Because even though going back to the time before Donald Trump is when Mike Brown, Philando Castile, and so on and so forth, people getting murdered, immigration with even under Obama, more people were deported than
True.
Donald Trump. So when people say they want to get back to the times of normal, like for me, it's like I want to move forward and away from it all because I think neither of the alternatives are great alternatives for me.
Right.
That being said, Donald Trump has traumatized Americans so much that they're willing to go back to bad because right now, you know, mediocre is better than bad. So people would rather have mediocre. And I understand that too. But I just really am curious as to like white poor people who've been struggling under both administrations as well. Like what is exactly do you want to go back to? Just feeling like you're better than black people? Is
Well,
that
at least
all?
they got something, I guess.
Yeah, back to sharecropper days, like that's
Jeez.
so for me, that's like so when people say they want to get back to normal, I do think we need a revolution. I think that we have been complacent for so long that these politicians have mounted us in a way. They're so negotiable. They've been getting paid for so long that we are sitting around here cheering them on, and people are really poor people fighting for tax breaks for the rich.
Right.
Like I feel like we're in the Hunger Games for real. Like we really have reached the point of being, you know, I don't know, a confederacy of dunces.
I think we've been that for a while. And to make it clear, people that are then worried, like, oh no, but I just mean like as far as functioning of government or having a leader who'll make me feel comforted. I grant you, Bernie is not like Mr. Warm and Cozy, but I assure you, he's gonna get up there and in a broken, overly Jewish accent say, "We're gonna take care of you. We're gonna get it done." You might not leave the speech like breathing slower, yoga wise, but you're gonna get the things you need. People are so much more affected by flash over substance. It's been our problem for so long.
Oh yeah, and I also think, Ben, to be honest, I think there's some anti-Semitism in that. Like I
Yeah.
think that a lot of white Americans see Bernie as radical, but they see him as this Jewish old man, and he's going to bring his Jewishness to. I've heard it in conversations, and I've heard people say that when you see the sexism and you see the racism, you got to be honest about the anti-Semitism as well. And I think
Mm.
that there has something to do with the like it's in there, and I think people are dishonest about that.
Yeah, look, I mean, look, America had three Jewish options this go round: Bernie, Marianne Williamson, and Ben Glebe, and they said no to all three.
Yeah.
Not cool.
And you know what? All three of you were all fighting for the common man.
Yeah, exactly right.
Negotiable, trying to make a better place. And the things that were being said about all three of the Jews are like, you guys are some campy individuals with this idea. It's amazing to me
Yeah.
how wanting equality and fighting for the average man is a lofty idea now. Like you're out of your mind because I mean, that shit is, they made Marianne Williamson seem like a complete kook, but I'm like, I listened to Nelson Mandela quoted Marianne Williamson when he was free.
Right.
That speech was hers, not his. Like
Right.
people didn't know that. I just think that it's so sad that the indoctrination of people is so deep now that they think it's ridiculous that you don't want us to be in debt for the rest of our lives when we graduate from college.
Yeah,
And I
exactly right. And it's like, don't take my campaign seriously. I'm the one that was in Puerto Rico on the 2 year anniversary of Hurricane Maria. You set me up with a friend of yours when we were out
yeah.
there to try to bring attention to the fact that these are American citizens. Why are we ever treating anybody, let alone American citizens, like second class human beings?
Yep, that's radical, Ben. What are you doing? That's very radical.
Thank you for speaking and performing at my campaign launch, too. That meant a lot to me.
I believe in you. I believe you. First of all, I think you're funny. I think you are. I think that the leader of our country has to have a sense of humor. For so long, we've made these people these caricatures, these serious, unapproachable human beings
Right.
that doesn't work anymore. I think you're smart, you're informed. I think that you approach things lightheartedly. Everything, Donald Trump we all got PTSD, mass hysteria, we got trauma, anxiety. It's constant. And I don't think that anybody should lead that way. And I really believe that you're informed and you really, just because you're a stand-up comedian doesn't mean that you don't know what you're talking about. And so I only support the things that I believe in.
I love you. I'm back in the race after those words. Thank you so much. Count me back in. I'm going to take on these guys. Maybe I have an electoral path still.
Yeah.
I know we only have a few minutes left. I want to cover some other things. So, tell people. I want to tell people a little bit about your background, so you get to understand where Ida comes from too. Her mother Puerto Rican, father Dominican, stepfather Cuban. You got two kids. You've had a tough path too. You were homeless for a while, living out of your car, and that's when you decided to start doing stand-up comedy. How did that shift come, and why, in that dire straits, did you think comedy was what you had to do?
So I mean, I didn't quit my job. I had a full-time job, and so it was cathartic, Ben. It was Chris Spencer who told me to go do stand-up. He
I
sent me
love
to the
him.
Westwood Brewing Company
Oh, that
to
room was the best too.
to do an open mic, And I started going there at night after work, after putting my kids to bed, and it became like my therapy. It wasn't about making a living at the time and quitting my job for a dream. It just saved my life at that moment, you know. And one thing I mean, everybody struggles, and I don't like to invalidate other people's struggles because they don't look like mine, because I know that people in mansions have struggles, you know. But for me, you know, when people say, "Oh, you were homeless," and I was like, "Ah, a lot of comedians were homeless." You know, I was a grown up. It was my job to get out of that. I've never been like a victim. I've always been. But comedy was just something that came along during a time where it was so dark for me that it brought like a little bit of light, and that was it just started building on top of itself, and it finally became something that you know opened doors for me where I could you know make a decent living. But it was just cathartic. It was just something that I needed at the time.
And how long ago was that? How long you been grinding, and what has this whole ride been? Once you stopped being homeless, you got out of the car, started finding success.
So it's been 12 years now. I started doing, I stopped being homeless, I would say um, maybe a couple of years after I started doing stand up. So I was doing stand up. It was actually the year that I did Last Comic Standing was when I quit my job, my full time job. So I had been doing stand up for 7 years, working a full time job. And I didn't, you know, I went years without sleeping more than 4 hours a day because I was
Wow.
involved with my kids, taking my daughter to school in the morning, making sure that I was there for swim practice, which happens in the morning, going to track practice, doing homework. And so I compromised me, not them. But yeah, I didn't stop working until 2014. It's 2020. So it's not like, you know, I sacrificed my children for this comedy dream. I sacrificed myself.
That's incredible that you just came at that from just as a stress release and something you needed for yourself, and it's now entertaining so many people. Tell me about did from the beginning. Did your stand up was it always social commentary? Were you ever like sillier in the beginning and just doing jokes for joke's sake, or were you always did you always have this strong point of view?
So I started pretty heavy and I had to lighten it up a little bit. I remember a comedian telling me that I was entirely too heavy and that I should stop because it was going to make people depressed. But I did, you know, I did have my hacky jokes. I'm not gonna lie. Like I remember having this joke. It was like a stock joke about a tampon that was so not who I am.
How'd it go?
But
How'd it go?
it was a joke, and it's funny because my mom loves this joke, which lets me know she's a hack. But it's a joke about a woman who broke up with her man, and you know that she was involved. And I personalized it. I was like, I had a boyfriend. I lived with him. He loved me so much. You know, he moved me in. He bought me clothes. He took care of me. He gave me a blood transfusion because I'm actually anemic and I have hypoglycemia. And I said that when we broke up, he asked me to give him the keys to his house back. And then, you know, he told me to give him the car back. And then he was like, give me your clothes back. And then he was like, I gave you blood. And then I threw my tampon at him and I said, I'll pay you in monthly installments.
First of
So that,
all, that's funny. Second of all, I love how you think that's a light, hacky joke. It still involves a very intense breakup and people moving out and how you stole my life. That's your lightest that you get.
but it was still hacky though, because
Yeah.
you could find it on the internet. But I have my, you know, I have my jokes where but I always lived in that space where I wanted to talk about social issues, but from the perspective of my life, as opposed to just saying, here's my, you know, climate change joke. But I would rather talk about, you know, how people in my neighborhood would throw styrofoam on the ground and be like, fuck the environment. You know, that to me, that was more, it's always
Right.
been more appealing to speak about social issues through the lens of the woman of color that comes from where I come from, as opposed to just, you know, like Jenna Friedman or people like that have jokes specifically about climate change. That never really appealed to me. It's always through the lens of how I see the world, and that's probably where where I had to come, where I started finding myself, I think through the help of like Roseanne Barr and when I did Last Comic Standing, learning to find the place where I would meet with the both, because I don't enjoy just talking about social issues just for the sake of social issues.
Right. Luckily, that matches with the times real well, though, because what everybody's into these days in stand up is these personal stories and where you come from. I'm stuck too much in just telling jokes. Like, I have my joke about climate change and about straws and sea turtles and about this and that. And I think it actually impedes my connection with people to some degree. I've never wanted to share that much of myself on stage, and I've been trying to do more, but slowly dipping my foot into it.
Yeah, but I think it doesn't. I think that there's a spectrum in comedy, right? And I think that we need you just as much as we need somebody who's just going to tell us their whole life story. Because I like watching you. Like when I watch you tell jokes and I laugh and it makes me think and it takes me away from the trauma of being kidnapped twice or because sometimes, like, I can watch Richard Pryor and I love watching George Carlin. And, I didn't, when I would listen to George Carlin a lot of times, or when I listen to him, I'm listening to his perspective and his take on the world as opposed to his relationship with his daughter.
Right.
I just think that it's necessary to have it all. Like for me, it's important to be able to escape from my world and go because I like to watch comedy. I like to watch other comedians.
I was gonna say that maybe I was gonna say tell that to my online follower numbers, but it reminded me of your thing. You tag all of your posts with "I get my likes in person," which is I know an
Yeah.
important thing to you. Where'd that come about? And then just explain to me like how you balance trying to build your fan base from your live and from talking and versus this game we all play, this hamster wheel of trying to build this social brand for everybody.
Well, you know what happened was that I started getting a lot of notes from people in the business about what I needed to do on social media. And I had to accept the fact that I'm probably not going to be a social media comedian in terms of that's where they come find me. And I started taking for granted my live audience because I was chasing that online audience and seeing these comedians that have like 3 million followers. And then I started doing research, and then I started learning that a lot of the people who have 3 million followers, a great percentage of those followers are under 12, and they're watching you because they can't go to a comedy club. And it just made me, through the Young Turks, a lot of people do come to my shows. I started really understanding the value of those people that actually buy tickets and come see you live. And I was like, wow, I was so focused on that I was taking that for granted. And I just realized that I get my likes in person. Like they come to my shows, they come see me live, they pay for my shirts, they buy tickets to see me. And there's value in that. And I should not bastardize them for trying to try to gain this audience of people who they're just there because it's free, and they're there because they're everywhere. It's not they don't have an allegiance to me or anybody else. They're just
Right.
swimming through the internet trying to for people to make them laugh, when the people who come see me in person want me because they like me for who I am and what I have to offer. So it's a reminder to never forget who keeps food on my table, which is really the people. I don't make any money on the internet. The money that I make is from my live performances.
I love that. You have always, and everything that you say and do is just so clearly you're just unabashedly you. You don't apologize, and you just are the most authentic, one of the most authentic comedians I've seen. So I love that about you. It's just you're pure Aida Rodriguez. You're pure your passion, your view, your perspective, and it's something I aspire to.
Oh, thank you. I appreciate that because I've always been. You're always one of the people that I remember bringing you up when I did Comedy Juice for the first time in Irvine, and you guys would put me on the shows because I wouldn't get like mainstream shows. They would try to put me like on Chocolate Sundays or
Right.
Taco Fridays, whatever they called it. But I was just like, I want to just work where everybody else is. I don't tailor my stand up for anybody. I just people who appreciate stand up, and you're one of the people that I used to watch because I was like, he is really having a good time because so many comedians look bitter. Like, and I always would say, whatever it happens, I don't want to be a bitter comic. Like, I want to always enjoy this. Like, because remember, comedy started off as my side bitch, like that mistress that I always enjoyed and eventually married, right? I left my wife. So I want her to always be, the mistress my mistress. I want her to be my girlfriend that I like. So you are always somebody who looks like you're having a good time. I never see you perform and think to myself, he fucking hates this business. Like,
That is a fact.
yeah, but there are some people that you look at, even though they may be sharp, they're very good, but you could just see that they've had it. You could see that comedy has beat their ass. And I'm
Uh-huh.
like, you ain't never been that to me. You've always been like, I'm like, Vince, as long as Ben's still having a good time, I'm still having a good time.
I love that. I love that. Yeah, I definitely have a good time up there. And the reason that I put you on Comedy Juice those times, if those of you listening who don't know, for some reason, the brand I created of live shows is just because you're funny and you're talented, and that's all that matters. I always tried to have just the sharpest eye I could for who I think would be a big star, and tried to give stage time to those people, because I know that oftentimes this business does not do a good job of finding and giving air to the people who are different, who have different voices, and have something unique to bring to the table. It's all the cookie cutter same things, and I try to fight that. I don't always do great at it, but I try my best to fight it.
Thank you. Yeah, no, I remember I did a show with you and all the guys from the Chelsea Handler show at the Brea Improv. And then something happened on that show. It was weird. Like somebody went on stage and said diss somebody else. And I was like, yo, the white guys do that shit too? Yeah, they
Yes.
on stage. It was weird, but it was funny.
So it's 10:02. I know you have to run. I
I'm
want to know
good.
if you happen to have another 5 minutes.
I do. I'm
Yep.
good.
Awesome. Okay, so because I want to get you a chance to plug whatever's going on, and then I want to lighten it up and do some thunder round stories with you, some silly stories. So, tell us what's going on. Where can they follow you? Tell us all the things.
The funny thing is, they can follow me on at Funny AIDA on Instagram and Twitter. On Facebook, it's my name, Ida dot Rodriguez, because somebody else stole or they have the name or whatever.
It happens.
And what I have going on is it's so funny because I closed my deal for my TV show and then coronavirus.
Oh no.
But we're writing it, so we're working on the script. So it's as long as this doesn't last 8 months, we're good. But
Can you announce what network that is?
it's for HBO Max.
Amazing.
Yeah, it's for HBO Max. And then I also closed the deal with ITV Studios. I'm working on an animated series. So, and I'm working so hard, man, to create programming that just shows Latin people as opposed to Latin people. They're people who happen to be Latin as opposed to just Latin people. Because I think Latin people push back away from those shows because they don't want to see themselves as caricatures. Like people ask me all the time, what do Latinos do for Christmas? And I'm like, what the fuck do you think we do? On fire? Like we do the same shit you do. We do it in Spanish or we do it in English and we do it with you eat turkey, we eat ham. Like it's not like I just want them to be so I'm working on these two shows about just people who happen to be Latino and what just tell stories, not so specific to the Latin experience because that's inevitable. That's just like if you sat there and did a show, like every episode would be like, this is what Jewish people do on Wednesday. This is the Jewish people do for December. This is it, and for some reason I don't understand why Hollywood doesn't get it. So it's just been interesting to have this time because as we go back through these drafts, and I have my showrunner is one of my showrunners is a white man, and I'm like, yo, like we're not llamas, we're people. Like we don't do not that different. We love our grandmothers just like you. You call yours Bubby, I call mine Zuela. It's like we have. It's like we're not a monolith. Every single one of us don't do the same thing. Some of us are Christian. Some of us are Jewish. Like, so it's been interesting to write these things because we got to unpack and deprogram.
That right there is the main reason why I've never been that much of an identity comedian. Specific, I mean, I wasn't really raised that much in it, so it's my perspective. But also, I just tend to historically recoil from things that are trying to find differences more within people. I always just see
Yeah.
people as the same, people as people, and so to me, I'm like, I don't think people care about the fact that I grew up Jewish. I want to just talk about from a human perspective everything that I try to tell, but it does make me less specific. So I think there's that, there's that balance. The way I try to describe it is that we're all the same. The differences between our cultures is just the flavor. It's not the substance. It's not the essence.
Yeah, I think when I started doing stand up, I did a lot more jokes about being Latin woman or being Puerto Rican. And I'm very proud to be Puerto Rican, specifically because of my grandmother. My grandmother was everything to me. So she was so proud to be Puerto Rican. And I feel like I hold on to that because I hold on to her that way. But what I learned was like doing those jokes, as I evolve as a comedian, I don't even realize how many times I'll do jokes that don't have anything to do with me being a woman of color. It's just me thinking as a person, like walking through the world and my experiences as a human being. Those things that I perceive that other people connect to. And even with like Netflix, I consciously made a decision to talk about my Latin experience because there's a big deficit. There's a big void in Netflix with Latino voices, right? It's only George Lopez and Fluffy. And when it comes to women, there's even a bigger void. There's Angela Johnson, Christella, and me. And there's just no representation. So I wanted to talk about my Latin experience, but from the perspective where people could look into my world as opposed to white people do this, Latinos do that.
Right.
But I was also able, I also talked about, sexual abuse. I talked about sexism. I talked about, domestic violence. I talked about all of those things from the perspective of a Latin woman, as opposed to, this is what Latinos do or whatever. And it was very important for me to show people that Latin women do have a point of view about social issues and political issues because it's not shown in the media. I mean, it took The View 20 years to put a Latin woman on that show.
Right.
So they think we're all Catholic, we all love Jesus, and we're all in the corner praying, getting beat by our husbands. And for some reason, we don't have anything to say. So I made a conscious decision to say, I'm a Latin woman, and this is who I am, and this is how I see all of these things from this lens. But I don't ever want to do a show that perpetuates stereotypes about my people.
And you packed all of that into like 27 minutes. So if y'all haven't seen the Ida Rodriguez episode of They Ready on Netflix, you gotta see it. Highly recommend. Just it's a powerhouse performance, and I really dug it. But also just an interesting kind of tie. And I realized as you brought up being proud of being Puerto Rican, obviously that absurdly insulting moment when Trump went down there after Maria and threw paper towels at everybody. Just like, here's all you need. Just dry up these huge floods. And ironic now how cut to just 2 years later, and what's everybody clamoring for? Toilet paper. People are
Yeah.
going into Mexico trying to get paper towels and toilet paper. Show you how we're all the same. Show you how you got to treat everybody exactly the damn same. It all comes down to those necessities. You don't treat one group like they just need paper and other groups as though they have some kind of higher needs. We're all the same. We all need the same toiletries, too.
I'm tweeting that. I'm gonna
Please.
quote. I'm gonna quote you too, because that's actually very true. And that was the other thing. I felt like my Puerto Rico is my grandmother's homeland more than it is mine. It's funny because when Donald Trump won, I got a lot of tweets, people saying, "Guess who's getting deported?" And I was like, "Tell me who," because I was born in Boston, bitch.
Right.
Who deported me to? But the morale boost for the island. I thought for me that I had a platform and a voice, and I wanted to give something to my people to be proud of and my grandmother's homeland because when you went to Puerto Rico, that Puerto Rico still hasn't fully healed from that hurricane
True.
and everything else that's happened since. So it was a moment for me to step up and say, I see you.
Yeah, and the biggest thing that they need, I've said it many times on the podcast and everywhere, in addition to obviously they need FEMA to step it up still and they need more funding, but they need people just to go visit down there when everything comes back to normal. Tourism needs to step up. It's this hidden gem. It's this beautiful, gorgeous beach paradise we have down there, and people don't talk about it. Let's go
Yes.
there before we even go to wherever else, what other country you want to go to. Go to Puerto Rico. It's part of our country, and it's amazing. And you'll just see a different side of this country. That's one that I just had a blast while I was even there on this fact finding trip and trying to help out a little bit. It was just an incredibly enjoyable week. The culture was just a blast. The bars were sick. It was a great time.
Yeah, go to Puerto Rico. They're tired of you in Cabo.
Exactly right. So let's quickly do a couple of fun stories and lighten this thing up. It's
Yeah.
time for the Thunder Round. All right, Aida Rodriguez. So on the day they closed the bars in Croatia, they decided no more bars as part of lockdown this whole planet's going through. A record number of people were hospitalized because of alcohol poisoning.
Oh, wow.
And New York has declared liquor stores as essential business, and they are exempt from Governor Cuomo's executive order for non-essential workers to stay home. Does this make sense to you? Does it connect? Are you a big drinker?
So I'm not a big drinker, but I am a big advocate of people in the service industry, right? And I know that a lot of those people, their livelihood is depending on us. I also think that even though I'm not a big drinker, in a time of all of the stuff that's going on, some people need a drink.
Yeah.
They just need it. And so, who am I to say you shouldn't be able to have a drink? I just like I'm deciding to stay home because I feel like I'm gonna fuck it up. I'm only human, so I'm gonna get it wrong with the gloves. I'm gonna get it wrong. I'm gonna get it wrong. So I just stay at home to minimize the risk.
I love that. But also, GameStop has ruled itself essential, the video game store. The CEO
Period.
sent a letter saying none of them can close. We help people make their home working experience. And so even though they have not been deemed they've not been deemed essential, they've told all their employees to tell any law enforcement that comes by to shut them down that they're essential and show them this letter from the CEO. Do you think gaming essential during this time? Should they stay open and be risking people's lives?
No, I think all of the businesses that are not essential to our survival as human beings should be closed down. Even though I do think that gaming is something that releases stress for a lot of people, it's available online. And if a lot of the services that we get, even our dinner, we don't go to the restaurant, they sell it to us. You should be able to sell that online. Just like if a meal is essential to me. So if a video game is essential to somebody for their mental well-being, then they should be able to access that online. Those stores should not be open. Because anybody who pulls out a letter from their CEO to justify being an essential business is a moron. And that person needs to be at home during this time.
Yeah, it's like keep playing your games. You don't need new games during the pandemic. Play your old games. But talking about food, here's one twist on it. I wanted your take on this. A Portland strip club that was forced to close due to quarantining now has their dancers doing food delivery. They have found a way. The Lucky Devil Lounge at 633 Southeast Powell Boulevard, new sponsor for the podcast. The club was forced to close with Governor Kate Brown's mandate. So what they're doing is they're having their dancers with a security guard escort each time, bringing food from their all-you-can-eat buffet. People are ordering chicken wings, steak bites, and mini corn dogs, and they're calling themselves Boober Eats. You cool with this? Or
Hell, no. The last thing I want with my wings is coronavirus ass. No, no.
But these dancers are have lost all their income, and they're only getting paid that minimum wage to do these deliveries, and they're making hundreds a day. So luckily, maybe this stimulus package coming through is going to hook up some of the strippers because gig workers are included, thank God.
Well, I mean, I don't want them to lose their income, so they could do peep shows online. They can do something else
There we
where
go.
they, yeah, they can do something on. I mean, what I'm saying is everybody's outsourcing their stuff and they're doing their stuff through the internet. Their dancers are no different, right? You could give somebody a virtual lap dance. Get with Steve Hofstetter, figure out how to do it, and you can make money that you can make a lot more money on Cash App than you get from people in person because you got a whole bunch of people tipping you at the same time. I just think it's
I'm unaware there was porn type stuff on the internet, but it's good to learn that from you. Thank you for educating me.
really, but it's not porn though. It's like the dancing. You could just do the dances on. You could do virtual, reality lap dances. You could do all of that stuff and make money, not only for the safety of the general public, but for the dancers themselves. Like they don't need to be out there. They're always expendable to us because we look down on them. They're human beings, and we should think about their safety too.
100% we do. I just discovered porn thanks to you, and you ripped it away from me. Now all I get is dances. Okay, fine. Fair enough.
Silly.
And Ida will be this Sunday. What's that?
Can we just say a big shout out to Pornhub though,
Yep.
who provided New York with those masks and and actually stepped up because we like to talk shit about porn people and look down on them. And they're human beings that want to make a living and they make an honest living. But I just think that was dope.
That was super dope. Granted, all the masks have one hole right in the middle, which is kind of weird. No, it's amazing. And of course, we got to stop looking. I think I'm probably the only presidential candidate that ever mentioned the porn industry. It's like, how is this one of the biggest industries in the world and we never mention it? You've never heard a presidential candidate talk about porn workers, sex workers. Why?
Mm-hmm.
These are people that all of you are enjoying and reaping the benefits of their work.
Yeah, I mean, Bill Clinton wouldn't have gotten impeached if his ass would have been able to be not to be so damn restricted and getting blowjobs from a little girl in the White House. If he could have been able to just jack off in peace to Stormy Daniels, who was around back then, then
Yep.
it would have been all right.
Yep. So Pornhub really has helped us through quite a lot of crises, and it could have helped us even back then in the 90s, and we didn't let them. Which
Yeah.
does bring us to our and so Ida Rodriguez will be our celebrity guest this Sunday on the Social Distancing Social Club with Steve Hofstetter and Chris Bauer. So look at my social medias for that, and you can come watch us talk shit for an hour, see some stand up, and take calls. But our last story, it's always Florida, Ida, that messes shit up. Always Florida, can't follow rules, sinkholes and basalts. What's that?
That's where I'm from.
Well, I'm sorry about that. And so a Florida couple in the time of social distancing orders were busted for having sex on a sidewalk outside of a Florida hospital. Anne Marie Tucker, 45, and Albert Singletary, 37, arrested in St. Petersburg on charges of trespassing and exposing their sexual organs in full view of passersby, in full view of the hospital. Her mugshot, she has a surgical mask under her chin because she was worried about her getting germs from others, but was not worried about her own germs being on the hot pavement. Why does Florida not know how to live as normal people?
I don't know. That's why I left there. It's funny. Monday, my mom called me and told me that her neighbors had a house party
Uh,
and with the bouncy thing in the back for the
oh
kids.
no!
In the heart of this, like this is what that day where Italy. I think it was when the day when Italy hit 300 deaths in one day. It was that day. And I was just like, Mom, please don't put that on Facebook. Don't tell. We don't need any more Florida stories. I don't know what it is about Florida. Florida and Ohio, they like go back and forth between that kind of stuff. But it's just crazy there. I don't know. That's why I left. I hated that place.
It's the penis of America. It looks like a penis. It's dangling down there, and we got to cut it off, set it off to sea.
No, not my mom.
All right, we can get your mom out first.
Okay.
Ida, thank you so much for being here. Stay safe, wash your hands, and everybody follow @FunnyIda on the internets.
Thank you for having me. I love you, and I look forward to the day where you lead the free world.
Ah, that's kind of you. I love you too, my friend. And to all of you listening, until next week, it has been Last Week on Earth.